My name is Hannah Brooks, and last Christmas, my parents decided I wasn't part of the family anymore. They said it was too awkward for me to come home, because my success made everyone else uncomfortable. So while they toasted champagne without me, I was lighting candles for 100 strangers. But what happened that night made my mother call me in tears the next morning. It started 2 weeks before Christmas. The air in the city was already heavy with cinnamon and fake cheer. Every store window sparkled. Every corner sang carols I didn't feel. I was sitting in my office, high above downtown Dallas, the kind of place my parents used to say only real men worked. But that afternoon, I was signing a 7-figure partnership with a clean water nonprofit. My assistant knocked softly. "There's a call from your mother," she said. I remember smiling. For a moment, I felt 12 again. The smell of Mom's apple pie, Dad's Christmas playlist, Sinatra, always. I picked up. "Hey, Mom, I was just thinking about—" She cut me off. "Hannah, I need to talk to you about Christmas." My pen froze midair. "Okay," I said. There was a pause, long enough for me to know it wasn't good. "Your father and we think it might be better if you didn't come this year." I actually laughed at first. "Is this a joke?" She sighed. "You've changed, sweetheart. You live in that big house, you talk about your charity work, and it just makes everyone uncomfortable. Your brother's been struggling. He says you always make him feel small." I couldn't even process the words. "You're uninviting me because I've been successful?" "It's not like that," she said softly. "It's just for the peace of the family. Peace in the family." That phrase echoed in my chest like a bullet ricocheting. They wanted peace but not truth. Peace, but not pride in their daughter. I hung up quietly. My assistant peeked in. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just Christmas being Christmas." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked through the ranch. 100 acres of stillness. The Texas sky above me felt endless, like it could swallow my sadness whole. When I bought the ranch 2 years ago, I wanted to build something that felt like freedom. A rescue shelter for horses, a greenhouse that ran on solar power, a big kitchen where anyone could eat, laugh, belong. Now it just felt empty. I scrolled through old photos, my brother Aaron grinning with frosting on his nose, Mom and Dad in matching sweaters, and I holding the camera. Always the one making sure everyone else looked happy. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Hope you understand, honey. We just want everyone to feel comfortable." Comfortable! That word broke me more than anger ever could, because comfort was what they chose instead of me. I stared out the window at the dark fields and whispered, "You raised me to be different. You just didn't think I'd actually do it." The next morning, I called my ranch manager, Luis. "Hey, do we still have that old barn kitchen set up?" "Yeah," he said. "Why?" I hesitated. "I think I want to host something. A dinner. For who?" I smiled. "For people who don't get invited home for Christmas," he laughed softly. "That's a lot of people, Hannah." "I know," I said. "Let's start with 100. By noon, I was making calls. Shelters, churches, hospitals. I told them, if you know anyone spending Christmas alone, send them to Brooks Ranch. No questions. No cost, the responses came fast. A retired nurse who lost her husband to cancer. A single dad with 2 kids living in a motel. A veteran still fighting invisible wars. Each story carved another piece out of me, but also filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Luis walked into my office that evening, holding a list. "We're up to 92 confirmed guests," he said. I nodded. "Good, let's make it beautiful." He looked at me for a long second. "You sure you're okay doing this? After, I took a deep breath. "I'm not okay," I said. "But maybe helping others feel wanted will make me remember what that feels like." The next days blurred into motion. We brought in chefs from town, volunteers who wanted to help. We decorated the barn with string lights, pine branches, and old family ornaments I couldn't bring myself to throw away. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon rolls began to fill the air again. The same smell I once associated with home. But this time it wasn't for show. It wasn't for them. It was for the people no one invited, the ones forgotten when the table was set. 3 days before Christmas, my brother Aaron called. "Hey," he said, his voice flat. "Mom told me you're not coming." "Yeah," I replied. "She made that pretty clear." "She just doesn't want drama." I laughed bitterly. "Since when does my existence count as drama?" He hesitated. "You always make things about you, Hannah." "That's funny," I said. "Because this year it's definitely not about me." "What's that supposed to mean?" I paused. "You'll see." After I hung up, I realized something. They had uninvited me. But I didn't need an invitation to belong anymore. That realization was like exhaling after holding your breath for too many years. 2 days later, the ranch came alive. Trucks rolled in with donated food and blankets. Local kids showed up to hang ornaments. Even the mayor's office sent a letter wishing us luck. I walked through the barn that night, the lights twinkling above the long wooden tables. 100 plates, 100 name cards, each one handwritten. Not guest 47, but Maria, Tom, Rebecca. Names mattered. People mattered. I sat down on one of the benches and looked around. The place felt warm, real, human. Something my family home hadn't felt in years. That's when Luis came up behind me. "Dinner's ready to go. All we need now is Christmas Eve." I nodded. He looked around and said quietly, "You built something special, Hannah." I smiled faintly. "No, we did." Outside, the wind howled over the fields, whispering against the old barn doors. It sounded like ghosts, but friendly ones. The ghosts of Christmases I used to love. That night, as I got ready for bed, I got another message. This time from Dad. "We'll miss you this year. Hope you're well. No apology. No explanation, just distance disguised as decency." I typed a reply, then deleted it. What could I say? "I miss you too?" That wasn't true anymore. I missed the idea of them, not who they'd become. I stared out at the ranch lights one more time before turning in. And I whispered to myself, "This year, I'm giving love to people who actually want it." And for the first time in a long while, I slept without tears. Christmas Eve came faster than I expected. The sun set pink and gold over the hills, and cars began pulling into the long gravel driveway. I stood at the entrance in a red coat, greeting each guest like family. "Welcome to Brooks Ranch," I said again and again, and each time someone smiled. A little shy, a little surprised. Some had never been invited anywhere in years. Some came with trembling hands and small gifts, cookies, handmade cards, gratitude. Inside the barn, the music played softly. The fire crackled, and laughter, real laughter, filled the space. An old man leaned toward me and said, "This might be the best Christmas I've ever had." I smiled. Then it's working. As I moved through the tables, refilling glasses, sharing stories, I realized something I hadn't before. Family isn't about blood. It's about belonging, about showing up when no one else does, and I didn't feel alone for the first time in my life. But I had no idea. Who was about to walk through that barn door next? The night was alive. Music, laughter, candlelight. 100 hearts are finally feeling seen. I was standing by the buffet table handing out plates when I saw it, a pair of headlights cutting through the dark driveway. Different, too polished, too familiar. My stomach tightened. Luis came up beside me. "Expecting someone else?" I shook my head slowly, but I already knew. The car door opened, and out stepped my mother. Then my father, then Aaron. They walked in like they owned the air. Like this barn, this world I'd built, was just another photo op. "Mom?" I said, my voice steady but low. "What are you doing here?" She smiled nervously. "Well, we thought maybe we overreacted." Dad added quickly, "We wanted to surprise you." I could feel every pair of eyes in the barn slowly turning toward us. A young girl tugged at my coat. "Is that your mom?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's her." My mother's eyes swept over the room, the long tables, the mismatched chairs, the people eating with gratitude instead of etiquette. Her expression hardened. "This is quite something," she said, like she'd stepped into a zoo instead of a miracle. Aaron looked around and laughed. "Wow, Hannah, you turned Christmas into a soup kitchen." Something in me cracked. Not loud, but final. Like glass splitting down the middle, Louise, ever the quiet protector, stepped forward. "Ms. Brooks, we're glad you came, but this is a private event for invited guests." Mom's tone sharpened. "We are her family." Louise looked at me. "That's up to Hannah." Every sound in the room seemed to fade. The music, the laughter, until all I could hear was the thud of my own heart. I finally said, "They can stay, because anger is easy. But dignity takes patience." We sat them near the end of the table. I could feel their discomfort like static electricity. Mom whispering about the decor, Dad pushing his food around. Aaron checked his phone every few minutes, sighing loudly like a man in the wrong movie. Across from them, a little boy was giggling with his sister over mashed potatoes. Their father, a veteran, thanked me for the meal, eyes full of peace. Mom leaned over. "You're really feeding strangers on Christmas Eve?" I smiled faintly. "I'm feeding people who needed an invitation." She went quiet. For a second, I saw something flicker in her. Guilt, maybe. Or just reflection. Then Aaron ruined it. "So is this what you do now? Show off how generous you are?" Louis shot me a look from across the room. He knew that look in my brother's eyes, the one that said, "You'll always be less, no matter how much you do." I took a slow breath. "Generosity doesn't need to be shown off," I said. "It just needs to be done," he smirked. "Yeah, but I'm sure the press release helps." I froze. "What press release?" He shrugged. "Mom sent your event info to a local paper. Thought it'd be nice publicity. For the family name." My blood turned cold. I turned to her. "You did what?" She blinked. "I thought it might make us all look good, honey. You know, as a family." The word family had never sounded so empty. Around us, people were still eating, laughing, unaware that the temperature at our table had dropped 10 degrees. I leaned in. "You didn't want me at your Christmas, but you wanted the credit for my kindness." Dad cut in, low and tired. "Let's not make a scene." I smiled tightly. "Oh, I think that's your specialty." I stood up. The microphone was just a few feet away. I'd planned a small speech. Thank yous, gratitude, holiday wishes. But when I took the mic, the words that came out weren't rehearsed. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began. "Some of you came because you didn't have a place to go. Some because you thought you didn't deserve one." I glanced toward my parents. "And some came because they forgot what love is supposed to look like." The barn went quiet. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. "When I was growing up," I continued, "my family taught me that Christmas was about appearances. About perfect photos, matching sweaters, smiles that lasted just long enough for the flash. But tonight I learned something better. That love doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be real." A woman at the front wiped a tear. Someone started clapping softly. Then the room filled with warmth again, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. I set the mic down and walked out into the cold. The air outside was sharp, full of stars. I needed to breathe before I said something I couldn't take back. A few minutes later, Mom followed me out. "Hannah," she said quietly, "you embarrassed us." I turned, stunned. "You embarrassed me for years, Mom. This was just the truth." Her voice shook. "You're still my daughter." I nodded slowly. "And you're still the woman who told me not to come home." She flinched, then whispered, "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the barn, at the laughter spilling through the doors, at the people dancing under string lights, and said, "You always had to prove you were better." That broke something in me I didn't know was still whole. "I never wanted to be better," I said softly. I just wanted you to see me. Aaron came out next, drunk on ego and cheap wine. Mom, come on. She's not worth it. He looked at me and sneered. You really think this makes you some kind of hero? I stepped closer. No, Aaron. It makes me someone who remembers what love feels like. You should try it sometime, he scoffed. You and your ranch and your money. It's all just a show. Luis appeared at the door then, watching silently. He didn't say a word, but I could tell he was ready if things went wrong. I turned to my brother, voice calm but edged. You think money changed me? It didn't. It just revealed who you were all along. For once, Aaron didn't have a comeback. Mom's voice cracked. Can we please not do this here? I looked at her, really looked. Her pearls, her perfect coat, her hands trembling. You did this, I said. You showed up here pretending to fix something you never wanted fixed. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And that silence, that absence of denial, said everything. Then Dad stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Hannah, you're being unkind. You don't know how hard it is for us to understand your choices. I laughed softly. My choices? You mean having integrity? He sighed. You always twist things. That was it. That sentence. The one he'd used since I was a child, whenever I told the truth he didn't want to hear. I stepped back, the gravel crunching under my boots. You know what, Dad? You're right. I do twist things. Like the knife you left in my back when you told me I was too much, too loud, too ambitious. He looked startled, not because he disagreed, but because I'd finally said it. From inside the barn came the sound of music starting again. Someone was singing Silent Night, off-key but beautiful. I turned away from them and said quietly, You should go. The guests deserve peace, Mom hesitated. We just wanted to see you. I looked her in the eye. Then you should have invited me home, and I walked back inside, leaving them in the cold. Inside, Luis met me halfway. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. Better than I've ever been, he smiled. They're gone? Soon, I said. I'll make sure of it. I went back to the mic one more time. The room cheered, unaware of the storm that had just passed outside. Before we end tonight, I said, I want everyone to take something with them. Not a gift, not food, but a reminder. You matter, even when the world forgets you. Especially then. The crowd clapped, and I saw faces glowing, some with tears, some with joy, and behind them, through the barn window, I could see my parents standing in the dark, watching the love they'd rejected blossom without them. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a dinner. It was my quiet rebellion, my way of rewriting what family meant. But I wasn't done yet, because love wasn't the only thing I planned to serve that Christmas. I had one more surprise, and it was the kind you don't wrap with a bow. Christmas morning. The sky over the ranch glowed faint gold, soft, forgiving. But I wasn't in a forgiving mood. The dinner had ended hours before. Guests were sleeping in the guest house full and safe. The barn still smelled of cinnamon and smoke, and in the middle of that stillness, I stood by the fireplace with a folder in my hands. Inside were the donation receipts, signed and sealed. Every dollar from last night, every cent of sponsorship and catering credit had been redirected. Not to my name, not to my company, but to a new foundation, the Brooks Family Trust for Second Chances. Except there was no family. Just me. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be documented, notarized, and televised. Luis walked in, rubbing his eyes. You've been up all night. I nodded. Just finishing something. He saw the stack of signed papers and frowned. You're giving it all away? I smiled. Not giving, redirecting. He chuckled. You've got that look again. What look? The one right before you makes rich people cry. That afternoon, the article went live. Front page of the local news, heiress hosts Christmas for the forgotten, donates 2.3 ma-quarters to homeless veterans in honor of family who disowned her. The photo showed me standing in the barn doorway surrounded by guests. And in the caption, The credit line read, "Funded by Hannah Brooks, sole trustee of the Brooks Family Trust. Not Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. Not the Brooks family legacy." Just me, by noon. My phone was vibrating nonstop. Calls, messages, emails. I ignored them all until I saw Mom's name flashing across the screen. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Her voice trembled. "Hannah, what did you do?" I leaned against the window, watching horses move through the frosted pasture. "I told the truth, Mom." She exhaled sharply. "You humiliated us." "No," I said quietly. "You did that when you uninvited me." She tried to sound calm, practiced. "You could have at least used the family name." "It would have looked better," I laughed softly. "Oh, it looks perfect to me. Your daughter built something beautiful and you can't take credit for it." She started crying then. Real tears, not performative ones. "Hannah, please. Your father's furious. He says this will ruin our reputation." I smiled faintly. "Maybe it'll rebuild your character." Then I hung up. By evening, the calls had stopped, but the silence was louder. I turned on the TV, and there it was. A local reporter standing outside the ranch, smiling at the camera. It's being called one of the most heartfelt acts of the season. Hannah Brooks, daughter of real estate mogul Robert Brooks, opened her $4 million ranch to strangers instead of spending Christmas with family. Sources say the event raised millions for charity. My parents' faces flashed briefly in a photo montage, posed, artificial. Then mine, laughing with a little girl beside the fireplace. Luis turned off the TV and grinned. That's gonna sting for a while. But revenge isn't always about pain. Sometimes it's about perspective. Because 2 days later, I got another call. This time from my father. He didn't yell. Didn't accuse. Just said, "You made your point." I almost smiled. "Which one?" He paused. "That we failed you." There it was. The line I'd waited 29 years to hear. But even then, I didn't gloat. I didn't say "I told you so." I just said "You didn't fail me. You just stopped trying." He was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Maybe she's finally feeling something real," I said softly. He sighed. "You always had to have the last word." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No, Dad, I just had to have the truth." 3 days later, something strange happened. A black SUV rolled up the driveway, the same one from Christmas Eve. I stepped out onto the porch. Mom got out first, holding a covered dish. It was apple pie. Her apple pie. She walked slowly, like every step weighed a memory. "I thought you might still be feeding people," she said. I nodded. "Always." She set the dish down on the porch rail and looked around. "It's beautiful here," she whispered. "Peaceful." I studied her face. Tired, soft, human. For once, not composed. Then she said something that broke me in a new way. "I saw the pictures online. You looked happy, Hannah. Genuinely happy." I swallowed hard. "I was," she nodded. "Good. You deserve that." Then she did something I didn't expect. She took off her gloves and reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what?" "For forgetting what kind of woman I raised." That moment didn't erase the pain. It didn't fix the years of silence or the words I could never unhear. But it was a beginning. We stood there for a while, the winter wind brushing past us. Then I said, "Come inside. There's pie, but you'll have to share it." She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "That's fair." And for the first time in a long time, Christmas didn't feel like a performance. It felt like peace. Later that night, I found a letter slipped under my office door. It wasn't signed, but I knew the handwriting. "You were right. I was jealous. Not of your money, but your courage. You do things I never had the guts to do. I'm proud of you, sis." I read it twice before folding it carefully into my journal. Revenge doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it rebuilds, piece by piece, truth by truth. That night, as I walked through the quiet barn, the lights still glowing faintly, I whispered to the dark, "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I finally do. The fire crackled softly. Outside, snow began to fall. Rare in Texas, like a secret blessing, and I realized the sweetest part of revenge, I wasn't watching them crumble. It was standing tall without needing them to fall. That winter ended more slowly than most. The ranch felt softer somehow, like the land itself had exhaled. The guests who'd stayed through the holidays helped clean the barn, mend fences, plant seeds for spring. And every morning, I'd wake to the sound of laughter echoing across the fields. The same barn that once held my loneliness was now filled with stories. Real ones. Messy. Beautiful. Human. The newspapers called it the Christmas of Second Chances. But for me, it wasn't a story about charity. It was about reclamation. Taking back what love was supposed to mean and giving it to people who'd never been offered it before. I never saw my revenge as cruel. It was a correction. A way of rewriting the narrative my family built around silence and shame. I didn't destroy them. I just made them look in the mirror, and sometimes that's enough. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail. Official. Embossed. It was from the city council. They wanted to partner with my foundation for a permanent outreach center. I smiled. Because I already knew the name I'd give it. The table. One long table, like the one in the barn. No hierarchy, no head seat, just a place where everyone mattered. Luis helped me draw the first blueprint. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. I grinned. "I've been ready since the night they uninvited me." He nodded. "You turned rejection into a revolution." I laughed softly. "Nah, I just turned pain into purpose. That became our motto. We painted it right onto the entrance gate. Pain into purpose. Every volunteer who joined us smiled when they read it, because they knew exactly what it meant. We'd all been left out somewhere, and now none of us would ever be again. Spring came in quiet bursts of color. Daisies along the fence line, horses grazing near the pond, and sometimes, when the air was still, I could hear the faint sound of church bells from town. On Sundays, I'd drive to visit my parents. Not out of duty, out of peace. Mom would meet me at the porch with 2 cups of coffee. We didn't talk about the past much, but sometimes she'd reach across the table and say, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." And that was enough. Dad stayed distant for a while, but one evening as I was leaving, he stopped me at the door. "Hannah," he said quietly, "you built something good." I nodded. We all could have built it together. He looked away, his jaw tight. "Maybe it's not too late." I didn't answer. Because forgiveness isn't a single word. It's 100 small choices that happen long after the apology. Aaron started visiting too. At first just text, then phone calls. Then, one day, he showed up at the ranch with a box of canned goods. "I figured you could use some help," he said. I smiled. Always. He looked around the barn, the same place where he once mocked me, and said quietly, "This place feels like home." I glanced at him. "It is." And just like that, the last sharp edge between us began to fade. But here's what they don't tell you about revenge. When it's done right, it doesn't leave ashes. It leaves clarity. I didn't ruin my family. I reminded them what love costs when you try to buy it instead of earn it. And I didn't lose my place in their world. I built my own and left the door wide open, because that's the real secret. When you stop waiting for people to choose you, you finally start choosing yourself. The following Christmas, I hosted another dinner. Not out of spite. Out of tradition. The barn was even fuller this time. More guests, more laughter. But one table caught everyone's eye. At the end, by the fireplace, sat my parents. Quiet, smiling, holding hands. When I walked over, Mom whispered, "We brought dessert." I laughed. "Another pie?" She nodded. 2, actually. One for you, one for everyone else. The music swelled, and for a moment it felt like the world had circled back. But this time, without the pain. I raised my glass. "To family," I said. "The ones we're born into, and the ones we build." Everyone clinked glasses. Even Dad smiled, and in that flickering light, I realized something simple and profound. Revenge had never really been about getting even. It was about getting free, free from needing their approval, free from shrinking to fit their comfort, free from the idea that love should be earned through obedience. That night, after everyone left, I walked alone under the stars. The ranch was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel empty. I looked up at the sky, at that endless Texas black, and whispered to myself, "You did it, Hannah. You came home after all." The wind moved through the fields, soft and slow, like the world was finally exhaling with me. And somewhere, deep down, I could almost hear my younger self, the girl who once begged to be seen, saying, "Thank you." The next morning, I stood on the porch, coffee steaming in my hands, watching the sunrise stretch over the hills. It painted everything gold: the barn, the fences, the wildflowers, as if even the earth itself was proud. Luis joined me, hands in his pockets. "You ready for another year?" he asked. I smiled. "Yeah, but this time, not to prove anything, just to live it." He nodded. "That's the best kind of revenge." I laughed. "No, that's the best kind of peace." And so, the story ends where it began, with family, with love, with loss turned into something unbreakable, because when they uninvited me, they didn't know they were setting me free. They thought they were protecting their comfort. But all they really did was hand me the space I needed to build something bigger than pride, something worth remembering. And now, every Christmas when the candles flicker and the laughter rises through the rafters, I whisper the same silent prayer, "Thank you for leaving me behind," so I could finally move forward.